One more thing. There are 4 options for this Anthony Davis injury, and I think there are reasons for optimism. I'll tell you why today's Locked On Mavs. One more thing.
I'm not a doctor, so.
That's it. It's me versus the machine.
That's it. I don't know.
Satnam change.
Nice penetrating thrust to the middle.
Hot man, the hot player.
Wait. One more thing.
Fired up.
Yeah, you're still locked on to the Dallas Mavericks, your team every day. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member covering the Mavs for the Locked On Network. Covering the Mavs for over 10 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app. See what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 5 to 6:30 Central Time. It's the One More Thing, a bonus episode of Locked On Mavs. If you missed the post-game episode with me and Slightly, go check out that episode. Broke down the Mavs game against the Jazz. Anthony Davis injury. Cooper Flagg playing awesome. Klay Thompson, all that kind of stuff there. But I want to break down the 4 options for Anthony Davis' injury, how many games he could be out for. There's some history of his injuries that I'll go through. I got a list of all the different injuries that Anthony Davis has had in his career, and so I went through it. Brian Suterer, our doctor friend, our sports doctor, great YouTube channel, had a good video on it. You can go watch that one, but I'll talk about some of the options and things that he talked about in this. And so let's break it all down. I think there are 4 options for Anthony Davis, and one of them is he's not out at all. The best possible option is he's not out for any games. Anthony Davis in his career has had 14 different hand injuries. 14. And he missed games in just 3 of them. 3 out of the 14 hand injuries he's had, where there's been 11 times in his career where he hurts his hand, goes out of the game, and comes back in and plays. Maybe this was going to be one of those options, but there was only 2 minutes left in the game, so he leaves the game. He's in a lot of pain. He overcomes the pain, puts a splint on it or whatever, and he could have come back in the game, but there wasn't enough time because the game was over. I think maybe we would have heard about that by now, but as I'm recording this, it's almost 1 a.m. and we haven't heard anything about it. So we'll see what happens. I'll give you the latest updates as soon as we get them. But that's one of the options. He's not out at all. That changes nothing then. And then the freak out is for nothing. And then it's another Luka Boo-Boo situation. The Luka Boo-Boos were the ones where he goes down, looks like he's going to be out for the season, and then he pops back up and he's fine. Anthony Davis has a lot of those. I talked to a lot of Lakers media people about Anthony Davis when the Mavs traded for him. And they said the same thing. They're like, yeah, he has these injuries where you just think he's done for the season. You think, oh my gosh, he looks like he's in so much pain. He must be out forever. And then he just pops back up and he comes back in and plays. So this is an option that he's not out at all. It's very much an option. Brian Suterer talked about in his video. It's very good. We didn't see any kind of big bending of the finger or anything like that, where you look at the finger and all of a sudden it's just completely bent to the left or bent to the right, things like that. That's a good sign for him. And so maybe that means that he's not out at all. So that is very possible. It changes nothing about the trade landscape. Changes nothing about the Mavs on the court, except for they lost this Jazz game. The other option is only out a couple games. He had, the 14 hand injuries. 11 of them he missed no games. One of them, he had a dislocation in his hand. That's in 2013-14, I think back with the Pelicans. And he only missed 1 game. A dislocation sounds like a big deal, but he only missed 1 game with that injury. And so it's possible that could have happened, and he's only out a couple games. That changes not much at all for you. That's just like a twisted ankle where he just leaves and he comes back, and you're like, all right, cool, great. So I think the first 2 options, he's not out at all, or he's out 1 or 2 games. There's history of that with Anthony Davis with hand injuries, and that could very well happen. It's also a good thing as well that it happened to his left hand and not his dominant hand, because his shooting hand, he has something wrong with it, has to have a splint on it. That changes a lot of things. He's out for a lot longer if it's a shooting hand than if it's his offhand. So that's another positive in that direction. Those are my reasons for optimism, is those 2 things. It could be out for a couple games, could be out for no games at all. That changes nothing about anything in the whole season. Nothing about the trade landscape, nothing about the Mavs on the court, really. Brian Suterer talked about the injury, what he thinks it could be. He thinks it's a hyperextension of the MCP joints, which is basically the knuckle. When he was walking through it and he played the video back and he gave the diagram where it's like, all right, it looked like where his finger bent back. It could be a hyperextension of that MCP joint, which is the knuckle. And in 2013-14, he had a fracture of his 5th metacarpal, which is the bone that is the bone that connects to the actual like palm of the hand part. That is where the MCP joint is. He missed 7 games that season. That was 2013-14 season. He missed 7 games with a fracture in there. And that's the other option. The third option is he's out for like 3 to 4 weeks, like 8 games, 7, 8 games, something like that. And that's the one that really throws a wrench in a couple of things. It's not the complete worst case scenario, but it does throw a wrench in some things, because if he's out for 3 to 4 weeks, that takes you right to the trade deadline. The trade deadline is in 4 weeks, just about. And so if you're a team trying to trade for Anthony Davis, one, I think you already know the deal with Anthony Davis, with the injuries, with everything. You've got to know that this is a possibility. The nicknames are the nicknames for a reason. And so if you're a team like the Hawks or the Warriors or whoever trying to trade for Anthony Davis, you've got to know this is already there. And maybe you feel better that, all right, well, we'd rather him sit out with this hand injury for a couple weeks than play and have potentially another calf strain or another lingering injury or something like that. At least it's a hand where we don't have to worry about him hurting something else. So in a weird way, it could be a positive, but it could be another thing that detracts somebody from saying, all right, well, we were thinking about trading for him, but man, he's dealing with injuries again. Really? We got to go through this again. And so that's one where you're like, all right, the out for 8 games, the 3 to 4 weeks timeline is something that's different. In 2018-19, he had a fracture in his hand. He was out for 8 games. And so 2 of the 3 instances where he actually did miss time with hand injuries, 2013-14 and 2018-19, he missed 7 and 8 games. So that's why I say that this is this third option. And I didn't do like a 2-week one. I didn't do a 1-week one. It's like, it's either he's out, not at all, he's out like a game, or he's out 3 to 4 weeks, it seems like. At least with the history of his hand injuries. It could be something completely brand new. Like I've said several times, many times, Jason Kidd says it best.
I'm not a doctor, so I don't know.
So I don't know, but there could be another option. But I think those 3 are the ones where, like, all right, it could be okay. The last one is the one where things get weird, because he could be out for the season, and coming up, I'll tell you why. That is the one that is the worst case scenario. Maybe I don't have to explain it, but I will. Come on. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs, one more thing, brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook, all kinds of things that you can use to get in on the action this basketball season. It's making basketball season even better. So if you're listening to this before Friday night, you can get NBA Happy Hour. Before the games tip off, FanDuel gives you a new way to kick off the weekend. It's called NBA Happy Hour. It's your official pregame limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app to get the action started. So go check out the FanDuel app, see what is available for you. I was looking at divisions, and I was trying to figure out what the odds to win the division for the Mavericks. The Spurs are minus 125, so they're the favorite to win the division. Rockets minus 105, so you're not getting good odds for either of those teams to win the division. Pelicans plus 100,000, Memphis Grizzlies plus 100,000, Mavericks plus 100,000. The Mavs are like 12 games back in the division. But you kind of look at that and you go, all right, well, what if they go on a run? What if Wemby could get hurt again? Okay, KD could obviously get hurt, and what if those guys fall out and all of a sudden Kyrie comes back and put $100 on there? I could completely change my life and get $100,000 on that. So all kinds of things you can check out with FanDuel. So go check it out. NBA Happy Hour, 5 to 6:30 Eastern time. Little basketball, little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. It's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Also brought to you by BetterHelp. There's so many things in a new year. You're trying to figure out new habits. You're trying to start new routines. You're trying to figure out what you're all about this season. My dad always picks like an animal that he wants to like set his year about, and like that's like the theme of his year. And so you have all those things you're trying to figure out. You have different dynamics of relationships, and sometimes you need somebody to talk to, somebody to figure out all those different things all the time. Figure out how you can obtain your goals. Figure out how you can fix those relationships, and that's where BetterHelp can help you out. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched with an online qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get matched with a fully licensed therapist to work under a strict code of conduct based on your needs. You can do all kinds of things. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
It's the one more thing bonus episode of Locked On Mavs. We're talking about Anthony Davis's injury. I think there's 4 options for him, and one of them is not out at all. One of them he's out a couple of games. Another one he's out like 3 to 4 weeks, which is a weird one. If we learn that, we find that out, I'm interested to see how other teams react to it, because right now it seems like they are kind of tepid on an Anthony Davis trade. If that happens and all of a sudden it dries up, then the Mavs then they're just dealing with the offseason with Anthony Davis. The 4th option is he's out for the season. And that one is if he has to have a surgery, if there's something wrong with the tendons in there. Brian Suter mentioned it's very possible he's a fracture of one or more bones in his hand. And so that's definitely a possibility. But he had fractures in his hand 2 different times, and he only missed 7 and 8 games in those times. So it depends on where the fracture is. But I think if a tendon issue or something like that, that's when it's surgery. And that's when you all of a sudden have to figure out something else. Because then a team's not going to trade for him this year. Unless they're really in on the Anthony Davis experience. They're like, well, he's going to be out for the season with a hand issue. He's going to recover from that pretty quickly. Then he'll be ready for the next season. Maybe they talk themselves into it still. They're thinking about it more for next year than they are for this year. But if he's out for the season, then you, the Mavericks, probably take him into the offseason. And then how uncomfortable does it become? Because this is the scenario if he's still on the Mavericks during the offseason. The Mavs don't want to give him an extension. He and his representatives from Clutch Sports want an extension. And what do they do to make it uncomfortable for the Mavericks? How do they change things? How do they put pressure? How do they apply pressure to this organization? The Mavericks could also then have hired their GM. They've already reported that they want to wait until the offseason to try and look over candidates, to try and interview people or to pick somebody. They've got their 2 co-interim GMs right now. But they could have a GM, and so that could change things. Maybe that changes the relationship between Clutch Sports. Maybe it is Clutch Sports. Maybe Rich Paul takes over the organization. We've seen it before. Leon Rose took over the Knicks. He was the CAA guy, and all of a sudden, like, Jalen Brunson's agent is the GM of the Knicks. Right? Like, that could totally happen. Maybe Rich Paul's the GM. And then that changes things completely. Then they're like, all right, we're giving you the extension, or who knows what happens there. I never actually thought about that as a possibility. So maybe that happens. But if we take it into the offseason, if he has to get surgery, he's out for the rest of the season, then you're thinking about all the different scenarios. All right, well, do they try to trade him around the draft? Do they try to trade him around free agency? Do they keep him and just see, all right, well, call your bluff? And maybe they're like, all right, well, we'll just let you play out the next 2 years, or keep trying to trade you. And then maybe you can make a $62 million expiring contract, which would be crazy. And that's 2 years from now. A lot of stuff can happen in 2 years. In 2 years, we saw Trae Young's value go from a lot to like nothing, right? A lot can happen in 2 years. A lot can also happen in a negative way too. But I think that's your 4th option. He's out for the season. He needs some kind of surgery. From what Brian said in his video, it did sound like that's kind of rare. That is one of those that doesn't happen that often. And in Anthony Davis's hand history, 14 hand injuries, he only missed games in 3 of them. And the 2 that were the most severe, 8 games and 7 games. Those were fractures. One of them was a dislocation. He missed 1 game. And so for the most part, we're looking at hand injuries that don't leave him out very, very long. And so if that's the case, then you'll be fine, and we'll be laughing that we were so worried about this. But he's out for the season. That changes a lot of things. Couple of things from after the game. Klay Thompson, he said he wants to hit 1,000 games in his career. He hit 900 in the game against the Jazz, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And I was like, oh, how many players have played 1,000 games? Only 154 players in NBA history have played 1,000 games. There have been like 4,900 NBA players, which sounds like not enough, right? But they've only been doing it since the 50s. And there's only about 450 of them at a time, right? So you kind of do the math, and that kind of works out. So he'd become one of like 150 players ever to play 1,000 games if he plays 2 more seasons, basically. So that's an interesting one. Actually, maybe the rest of this season and the next season he could hit it. Yeah, 900. He's at 900 right now. So he plays one more season, he could hit that. That's kind of an elite group. Klay Thompson also said that Cooper Flagg, he'll be a perennial All-Star. It's just a matter of time. And I thought that's great praise from somebody that's been around Steph Curry, obviously played LeBron James a lot, has been an All-Star several times himself. That was really fascinating. Cooper Flagg, games with 25 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, under 20 years old. The leader in the clubhouse, LeBron James, 22. Luka had 11. Cooper Flagg now in 3rd with 5. And he's got a bunch of time left to do it. Almost a year to get more. 25, 5, and 5 games. He just keeps racking up the points, man. Racking up the assists, racking up the rebounds. His passing has just been absolutely next level. The rest of that list is actually kind of funny. Carmelo Anthony, Anthony Edwards, and LaMelo So Carmelo, LaMelo, and Anthony Edwards have had 4 of those games when they were 19. Kevin Durant and Kyrie are together. They had 3 of those games when they were 19 and were in the NBA. Shaedon Sharpe had 2 of those games, the 25, 5, and 5 games, under 20 years old. And then 15 other players, including like Tyreek Evans, Emmanuel Mudiay, like some random players, had 1 game where they had 25, 5, and 5, under 20 years old. There you go. That's my thoughts on Anthony Davis' injury, some of the options for him. I think there's 4 options like that, and we'll see what happens. We'll give you the latest whenever it happens. Subscribe to the Everydayers Club in the text line. Different ways to follow the show. Just $5 a month. Help support the show, and it also gives you ad-free episodes or the text line. You get text alerts sent straight to your phone. Thanks so much for listening to Locked on Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom. That was my second time recording this. The first time didn't take. Was the second time better?